And then I'm also going to choose my brush strokes with those things in consideration. So I'm going to choose strong brush strokes versus soft brush strokes to create strength and dimension in her fine hair. If I paint with brush strokes that are really diffused and soft, they'll get lost in her hair. So some of our soft brush strokes would be like a crochet is a little softer, or if we were to paint with a ridge painting or panel painting, those would honestly get lost in her hair down here. We could maybe do that up here on the top, but I'm not going to choose those types of brush strokes down through the body of her hair because you'll never see them. So if you want strength, you probably want to stick with something more like a slant or a brochet. So most of my paints through the interior of her hair and the perimeter of her hair are going to be either a brochet or a slant. So I've gone ahead and pre-mixed my sunlights because I know you guys already should by now know how to make sunlights. So this is Sunlight's Balayage clay-based lightener, specifically designed for balayage. So I want to make sure that I have my lightener nice and warmed up and nice and thin on my paddle before I start to paint. And for those of you guys that caught Adrienne live this week, at the beginning of the week, she gave us a really great tip.
Hi, Elise.
On making sure that if you're working with delicate, soft hair, and you want delicate, soft paints, which is what we need on her, because her hair is so fine, you want to make sure that you have delicate lightener application on your paddle. If I had super thick, coarse hair, I would need more lightener, so I would need more product on my paddle. But if I had too much product layered up on my paddle here with Misty's hair, it's too much weight. It would fall right through that fine, thin hair.
Elise says, great week of classes. You did amazing job.
Aw, thank you. Who said that?
Elise, rocks.
Hey, Elise.
Hi, Mun.
Who do you see?
Mun Christensen?
Oh, hi. I thought you said mom.
No.
All right, so for those of you guys that caught me live last weekend, we talked a lot about brushes and why I choose certain brushes. So I'll give you a little demonstration here in a second on the difference. But you will see that I'm not using a Sunlight's brush currently. I'm using a Fermar brush right now. So this is a soft bristled brush. Anytime I'm working with really fine hair, I'm going to switch to a soft bristled brush. Now, if I switch to a soft bristled brush, I'm going to lose probably about 2 levels of lift. A stiff bristled brush like Candy Shaw's brush is going to give me a little bit more lift. However, it's also going to layer on a little bit more product than what Misty's hair can support because it's so fine. So if I use that stiff bristled brush, which puts a little bit more product on there, it's going to fall through those open spaces of her hair and create bleeds, which is honestly the struggles I had in the beginning with fine hair. And it took me a while to realize that if I just switched my brushes, that would make a world of difference.
Donna Wilson says, thank you for teaching us so much this week.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in to us, Donna. I myself have learned so many amazing things this week. It's been such a great week of education.
Elise, I used your 15 foils yesterday and it turned out wonderful.
So this is a Lowlight. So this is Well Up Color Touch. Equal parts 771, 871, and then equal parts to Trionics No Lift Developer with 1/32 of Olaplex. So I'm just painting some depth in there
Hi, Cheryl.
to create a little bit more strength in her final look, which is going to make her hair look more three-dimensional, which is therefore going to make her hair look fuller. So a lot of times you guys see me paint for blend and diffusion, and we honestly want to do the opposite of that when we have somebody with fine hair. We want to set up strength. talk about the two different brushes that I'm going to be using today. So this is a candy shell brush from Sunlight. This is a stiff bristle brush. And then this is a Framar brush or a soft bristle brush. I also use the Color Track one that's identical to this. So sometimes you'll see me use Color Track, sometimes you'll see me use the Framar. They're identical, just different brands. So this is really soft, so it bends, and this one's really stiff. So I will get a little bit more lift if I use this brush. However, the reason why this is going to give a little bit more lift is because with the stiff bristle, it can layer more product on. But when you have hair that sits real open like this, Misty's hair sits real open, all that product is going to go whoop and bleed through the bottom. So I need a brush like this, but it's not possible to lay as much product on there because it bends. So it'll bend before I can actually layer as much product on there, so then it's not as heavy, so then it'll sit on top. So if you're working with something that has really fine, thin hair, try switching to a thin or a soft bristle brush. If you have somebody with super thick, coarse hair, try a stiff bristle brush like Candy's brush.
Hi, Berlinda, Terry, Jennifer.
Hey, ladies. All right, so let's talk a little bit about placement real quick. So on fine hair, you are not going to see me take itty bitty baby sections because, again, those will get lost. She doesn't have enough hair for that to really stand out. So you're going to see me take sections that are at least an inch thick, probably thicker.
Hey, Bab.
And then where you normally would see me section in a bunch of triangles, I'm actually going to take sections that are a little bit more like squares, like this. So normally you'd see me paint like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
But because I need a little bit more oomph to the hair to support the lightener, you're going to see me take more squares, like that. And it's just going to give me just that much more hair to support the weight of the lightener.
Berlinda wants to know where you got your watch accessory.
Amazon, actually. I know, isn't it cute? So
Amazon.
much better than just the basic.
Bab, I am Dusty. I'm her little sister.
It's so funny, I still call
Hi,
her my little
Kelsey.
sister sometimes, and you know. I mean, we are, well, Dusty's going to be 40, so.
Shut up, I'm 39.
Hey.
I've only been 39 for a couple months. I'm not.
I know, but I still call you my little sister, and sometimes people are like, oh, how old is she? Oh, she's 39. Anyways, all right, so let's talk about placement a little bit. All right, so I went ahead and set in some brochets down there. So for those of you guys, again, that have been watching education this week, I'm going to touch on some of those examples just so that you have a comparison. So Yara did a fantastic video for us yesterday on a client that had super thick mass quantities of hair, right? So one of the things that she did with her client, if you go ahead and watch that replay back, is she bricklayed her highlights and her lowlights, which is also what I oftentimes will do when I have somebody with mass quantities of hair, because it will kind of like sink that hair in a little bit or deflate it a little bit and give it like soft diffusion, which is really beautiful. But we don't want to do that when we have somebody with super fine hair, because again, it'll get lost. So what I want to do with Misty is I want to almost travel each highlight up her hair so that it gives it some strength. So I want to place that highlight either directly over or slightly offset from what's below it, so that the highlight underneath of it sets it up so it gives it kind of a strength. So
Hi, Maria.
Bali wrap is really going to come into play because I can see. If I was doing this with foil, I wouldn't be able to see what was there previously.
Elise, me and Lacey both do hair. Misty is an esthetician.
She did my hair once. It was.
Hey, I was in school.
She didn't go to school. She has a license, but she...
I was in school with $5 shears. And you got a lot of hair.
Hi, Sam. Hi, Patrice.
Let's just say she's as good at doing hair as I am at doing skin.
She does
You
a good
wouldn't want me
perm.
to give you your facial.
Yeah, I can wrap a perm like nobody's business.
Well, I cannot, so there you go.
She gave me a perm one time. It was really good.
I can style. I can style thin, fine hair. Pretty rad.
You guys, this is Dusty's first time doing camera work for us, so if you guys need her to move at all, just let her know. She's happy to do that. I don't think she'll bite your head off for it, right, Dusty?
Probably not. We'll see.
Probably not. Alright, so what I'm doing is I'm looking to see where my highlights are underneath. And one thing I want to point out is that I'm not looking for where that highlight starts. I'm looking for where that highlight ends. So when I'm looking for placement, I'm not trying to line it up with here. I'm trying to line it up for where it ends because I want those ends to kind of flow in together. So what that's going to do is it's going to create it to be slightly offset. So that this is going to kind of merge that way. So I'm looking where those ends are. Just like that.
Thanks, Maria. Maria said I'm doing a good job.
You are doing a good job. You're doing a great job.
So you apply on top. When do you know to saturate the ends?
So I only saturate the ends if they need it, but I'm also going to be really careful on somebody that has as fine and fragile hair as Misty does. So it's funny that you asked that question because this is the first one that I really need to saturate the ends. If you look, she has some that are saturated, that are already blonde right here, but then she has this right here that's not. So I am going to go ahead and saturate the ends, but very softly. So what I mean by that is I'm going to stop talking in a second here so Dusty can hear. I want you to listen because you should be able to hear my bristles. And anytime you can hear my bristles, that means that I'm not really going for full saturation. I'm just kind of putting like a bump of lightener on there, which is going to make it work almost like a 10 volume kind of lift, just to kind of bump those ends. So can you guys hear that? So I'll show you what it sounds like if I was going for full saturation, and then I'll wipe it back off again. But if I needed full lift, you would only hear the lightener, not the bristle, which means you're not going to hear anything. So it would sound like this. But I don't want that much saturation because she's got really fine hair. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe my brush back off and then I'm going to pull it back off again, which means she'll be able to hear it.
Jennifer Dickerhoof says she should come bring wine and coffee.
I mean, that sounds fabulous.
She said the best sisters.
I mean, Jen, that sounds amazing.
Berlinda says she's so in love with Balayage because she took a private lesson with You're the Best.
Aw, thanks. All right, so this is my shadow tone. So I'm just going to kind of dust in a low light. This is Wella 771 mixed with 871. And because it's equal parts with Developer, it's going to be a little darker. So it's going to be closer, even though the 8 is in there, it's going to appear a little closer to a 7.
Terry says sometimes her Balayage can get blotchy underneath, and how can she prevent that?
So if your balayage is getting a little blotchy underneath, that can be a lot of things. So my first thing that I'm going to ask you is what's your mixing ratio? If it's a little too wet, then it can kind of swell while it's processing and create uneven patches in the hair. The next thing that I'm going to ask you is, are you painting with the lightener or are you painting with the bristle? And the reason I ask you that is because if you're pushing all the way through to the bristles of the brush, then you're probably pushing past the surface of the hair. You really should just be painting on the surface. But if you're pushing past because you're too heavy-handed, then underneath you're going to get lightener like that. So a really great way to practice in the salon, and this is something I have my students do, is to work on painting on a comb. And let me show you what that looks like. So go ahead and load up a paddle. So what I want you to do is I want you to just be painting with that lightener, not with the bristle. So what that looks like, if you can get close enough, Dusty, is that I'm literally hovering above like this, which means there should be no lightener falling through on the other side. Now if I'm painting with the bristle, or too heavy-handed, look what happens. Now look at that. Do you see how it's coming through on the other side? That's going to create unevenness and splotchiness underneath. So that could be what's happening. If you're too heavy-handed and you're painting with the bristle, you're going to push Lightener through like that. So try practicing on a comb and really try to like literally just hover just on the Lightener so that the bristle never touches. So you see how there's no Lightener that went through? And that's because I'm painting with the Lightener, not with the bristle. That's a really great training technique.
Sam says he needs the borders to open up so he can come do a live with you in real life.
That would be amazing.
Mickey, hi Mickey. She says, do you need to worry about hair breakage with the sun cream and fine hair, especially if hair is longer and will take longer to paint?
So I mean, you always need to use your best judgment, right? First of all, is the answer to that question. But secondly, as long as you've mixed properly and applied properly, no, I don't worry about that. But if you mix too wet, yes, you can get damage. If you apply too heavily, yes, you can get damage. If you apply too heavy of a saturation in the area where it doesn't need it, yes, absolutely you can get damage. So I mean, that's kind of like a yes and no kind of a question or answer. I mean, on Misty, what I chose to do is mix 40 volume, not 50. On all of my clients with super coarse, thick hair, I'm always going to use 50 volume. But with Misty, I don't need anything quite that strong, so I went back to a 40 volume. Oops.
Just throw that on the floor.
Yeah, we don't need that. So I'm not ever going to use...
Hi, Jameson.
I shouldn't say never, but I mean, I usually don't use sun cream on super fine, thin, fragile hair because I just don't need it.
Hi, Jay.
I'm going to use 40. But with all of my clients with super coarse, thick hair, I am going to use 50. But no, I'm not worried about damage because I know that if I mixed it and applied it properly, then I don't have to worry about that. But let me show you something real quick right here, right up here. So if we're mixing with a 50 volume, but we understand saturation. So this is if you're looking at the hair. So I can saturate my 50 volume mixture at a 10 volume level, at a 20 volume level, at a 30, at a 40, or at a 50. Now I chose to use 40 on Misty because I know I won't ever need this. But with a 50 volume on somebody with coarse thick hair, I have this huge range that I can work with so that I'm not having to mix separate bowls. Now I can use that 50 volume like a 10 volume just with my saturation, and this is just the doming, which I'll show you that real quick on a paddle. And so as long as I take those things into consideration, I know I'm not going to create damage.
Yes, Jay, you can watch this later and show your other stylists.
Absolutely. It'll be pinned to the top of the forum. All right, so watch. So this is a 40 volume developer mixed with sunlights. But I want to show you how I can achieve 10 all the way through 40. So if I flat load, so this is flat load, it's like that. It's a flat load. Then I can paint like a 10. All that's going to do is give me a base shift. So start with a flat load and elevate just slightly. So dome looks like that. That's going to create a 20. So here's 10, 20,
Hi, Yara.
30. A little bit higher dome. So you can see I'm building saturation. 10, 20, 30, 40. You can see that dome looks different, right? So if you look at that, you can see that saturation is completely different from here to here. Even though this is a 40 volume, this is going to dry out before it lifts past a 10. This will dry out before it lifts past a 20, this will dry out before it lifts past the 30 and so on and so forth. So as long as you take those things into consideration, no, I'm not worried about that. I wouldn't take Sunlight's mixed with 50 on Misty, for instance, and saturate at this level, because one, not only is it not necessary, but two, yes, it would create too much damage. Now, would that create damage on somebody that was, you know, level 5, super coarse, thick hair? No. But that's taking all those principles into consideration.
I think gives you a good visual.
Good?
Yep.
Okay, good. Any questions on that?
Lori asked if you should always use a soft brush on fine hair.
I hate to ever say always or never, because sure enough somebody will, you know, prove me wrong, but me personally, I do. Anytime I'm working with super fine, thin hair, I personally do. I just use that soft bristled brush as kind of like an insurance policy to make sure I'm not going to sink through the hair. I mean, if Dusty kind of takes a step back and stands right where I'm standing, this section is about 1.5 inches deep, but yeah, I can see through it. So if I can see through it, that means I don't want to put a huge dome of Lightener on there because it's just going to sink through and bleed, right? So I don't want to use that stiff bristled brush that would put that maximum saturation for maximum lift on there, because it's going to, this hair can't support that, it's going to fall through. So with a soft bristled brush, it's going to help keep that doming saturation down for me a little bit, which means I'm not going to get as much lift, but I'm not going to get the bleeds, which, I mean, I don't need as much lift on her hair anyways, because, you know, she's only level 7. And so I am 100% comfortable with being able to get the lift that I need for her hair with a soft bristle brush.
Hi, Bernadette. She says, thank you so much. Great advice.
You're welcome.
Jameson said your apron is really cool.
Well, thank you, Jameson. I got
With
it
your-
from this really cool friend of mine.
He also said you're a Lightener developer sensei.
I tried. That's a little bit of a hair nerd. So you guys saw I didn't pull that through the end. So with Misty's hair, you're going to notice that a lot of her ends I don't saturate. And that's just because Misty has baby fine hair. I don't want to damage her hair. So if I don't need to saturate through the ends, I'm not going to. She does already have previous balayage. So in a lot of these sections, it's not going to be necessary. So for some of you guys, you might have noticed that in the first 2 sections, I was painting, or sectioning, excuse me, in a straight line. I am starting to work towards a bow now, because I'm up into the top part of her hair where I do want to start to create a little bit of diffusion for grow out. And I sectioned in straight lines at the bottom so that she would have strength in her perimeter.
That is a birthmark. It's not an old highlight right there. You can kind of, I'll just point that out.
Yeah, that right there is Misty's birthmark. She has no pigment right there.
Everly says, what's up?
What's up? What's up? Alright, so again, I'm choosing strong brush strokes because I'm trying to create strength. And you'll also notice I'm not elevating Misty's hair as much as you guys are used to seeing me elevate. And again, when I elevate, that's for diffusion. So with Misty's hair, I'm not trying to create as much diffusion, I'm trying to create strength. So I'm not elevating her hair as much. I'm holding it more down. Whereas a lot of times you guys would see me hold it more up. But that's with much thicker hair. I'm gonna give Misty a complex after this.
Oh, you think I
The
don't know?
millions of times that I'm
You think I
saying.
don't know I have thin, fine hair.
Poor Misty, like how many times can we say fine thin hair? Fine thin hair. Now one thing I want to point out real quick. When I'm sectioning or pulling hair, you don't see me pulling from up here. You're seeing me pull from down here. So let's talk about that. The only time you're really going to see me pull from the top is in her part line. The reason why is because I'm pulling from what she's going to see. Her hair falls over here, so she's never going to see zone 1. What she's going to see is zone 2 and zone 3. So when I'm pulling for sectioning, I want to paint what she's going to see. She's going to see down here. So that's where I'm pulling for her sectioning. The only time I'm ever going to pull from zone 1 is when I'm in an area of her hair where she's gonna see zone 1. Because this is what she sees, so I need to make sure that my placement is on point for down here. Alright, so I've got some strength built up now in that area. And I did paint all the way up into zone 1. Up until this point. But now I'm going to start creating some drops. I wanted to go ahead and paint all the way up into zone 1 below her crown so that we can set some strength in there. But I do want her to look a little more melted through the crown. So now I'm going to start to drop those placements. And I'll let those pop out from underneath. So I'm going to spread the hair out and kind of see where it lives.
I have a question. So on, you know, most clients, they have where it wants to split.
Uh-huh.
Do you ever put anything there just for when it does split?
So that's a great question. So that depends on what color they are. So if I was painting a heavy blonde, then I would 100% paint a highlight right there, because if I was painting a heavy blonde and their hair split, you would want to see a blonde. If I was painting a brunette, I would definitely not paint a blonde there, because I did that once by accident and it was not good. It was like you're like putting like a neon sign that was like, look at my colic. So it was not good. So if you're painting a brunette, for instance, then I would definitely not put a highlight there, because if it splits, you don't want to see a highlight that like points out that colic, right? So on Misty, I'm going to paint her to look a little more melted right here. So because I want her to be a little more melted right here, I'm not going to paint a highlight there, because if it does split, I want it to still look melted. So it kind of depends on what you want to see in that end result if it splits. So if I was painting her a heavy blonde, yes, definitely, because you wouldn't want that to open up like a black hole. If I was painting a brunette, definitely not, because it would just point an arrow to it. And for her, because I'm painting her kind of melted, I would want that to stay dark, because I want her highlights to be like this.
Okay.
That's a great question.
Hi, Melanie.
All right, so I'm going to come off to the side and I'm going to connect from here down. So again, I'm kind of connecting here in a drop. And I'm going to paint a little bit of a shadow, again, from meltiness, right there. And then I'm going to flat load and just put a little pop through her ends, but not with full saturation. This is more at like a level 20 kind of a saturation. So you should be able to see the hair through the lightener a little bit. And if you were standing right here, you'd be able to hear my bristles.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
Hi, Mom.
Alright, so I'm going to come on this side over here. And again, I'm going to connect this highlight to that highlight. I'm not going to go above it. I'm going to connect to it. Just like that. And I know I painted a melt on this side, but right here I kind of like that, so I'm going to leave it. And again, I'm not going to fully saturate here. I'm just painting at a level saturation of about a 20. Because I do not want to overprocess Misty's hair. She's my sister. I have to live with her. And she can be mean. She can be mean when she's mad.
We have stories.
We do have stories. Alright, so she's already a level of lightness here in zone 2 and zone 3 that I'm happy with. In my opinion, if I make this too light, it's going to distract from here, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to leave this, and I'm just going to paint a little shadow right there to soften up her sparkles there.
Sparkles. We don't have sparkles.
What are you talking about? You don't have any sparkles? What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
This thing's sparkly, it's not nice. I mean, after you get done coloring my hair.
Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and head on over here to the side.
Hi, Rob. He's asking if she has any gray hair, what percentage?
So Misty does have gray hair, yes. It is very, it's very spread out, which is nice because it's not like, you know, in one concentrated area. It's just a little bit that's more concentrated right there on her peaks, but not a lot. I mean, I would say she's probably like 30 to 40%, but it's definitely very spread out.
I was going to say like 15.
No, it's more than that. It's definitely more than that.
And then
If you really look, it's definitely more than that. But what's nice is that it's very spread out. So, I mean, we're not at a stage of the game where I'm so much worried about like covering as much as I am about blending. You're so funny.
I'm not ready for that. I'm not ready for
I'm
that.
sorry.
Hi, Adria.
That's reality. Hey, Adria.
Hey.
Adria said, aw, hey, Misty.
Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and, again, I'm not looking so much at here, I'm looking at here. I'm looking at where her hair opens up here, and if you look, it opens right here. So that's going to be my section.
Mom said gray hair.
Oh, does that make her feel old? Your daughter has gray hair.
And I'm going to sink a low light right here so that the highlight that I put right here pops more. If I put a highlight here, it'll actually diffuse that. So if I really want this to be strong, I want a shadow right there.
Mom had more gray hair than us at this age, so nanner, nanner, nanner.
Oh, I really feel like I did get a lot this year. I don't know if it was all the stress of
Yeah.
so early and
For real.
Yes, Adria, it's me.
Alright, Dusty, you want to stand right in front of Misty so that you can see? Alright, so with Misty's hair, I am going to be mindful to paint on both sides. So I'm going to paint here on the front so that if she wears it, I asked her before we started, does she wear her hair more curled or straight? She wears it both. If she wore her hair more straight, I would probably only paint her highlight on this front side here. But because she wears it both straight and curled, I want to be able to see it as it ribbons back and curls. So I'm going to paint it on both sides.
I feel like you used to have a name for that.
You said name for what?
What you're doing right now.
Ridging?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so what I'm doing right now is ridging. So what Dusty means by that is, so here is the ridge, and I'm painting on both sides of that ridge, which is what I call ridging.
Mom said her revenge is complete. Mom, she didn't have a girl yet, so no, it isn't.
Oh, that's funny.
Adria says she loves that we're having a sister day.
Isn't that fun? I know. When Dusty said she would camera for us, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so much fun. Alright, so I have just a damp towel right here. Just gonna kind of dust that off her skin real quick.
leave it on the one brown spot right there, please.
It's not how this works.
It's an experiment. Let's try it. Maybe
That's
some lights can
not
branch
how
into
this works.
skin lights.
Skin lights.
Skin lights.
I'll help you. I'll do that.
I'm gonna like a full facial of that, please.
Alright, so I do have a little bit of lightener on there. I'm going to go ahead and set it right on the corner and paint through. And then I am pushing with my brush a little bit so that I'm kind of wiping some of it off. So I get lift, but it's not fully saturated so I don't get breakage. And I'm going over it a couple times because I'm trying to create a little bit of friction, which will create a little bit of heat, which will create a little bit better lift even at a lower saturation.
Brooke said, such a beautiful hairline paint.
Well, thank you. Thanks, Brooke. Is that Brooke Masters?
Yes.
Brooke, you did such an awesome job with your minking technique. That was so fun.
Jay says, do you have a full side section in this? How far back?
Ask me that one more time.
Do you have the full side section in this? How far back? It's not the full side.
He was. I think he jumped in after she sectioned like right behind him.
Mm-hmm.
If you still
So
need an
it's
answer
just-
to that question, can you ask me again, maybe in a different way? I'm sorry, I don't understand exactly what you mean.
I think that,
He wants to know where you parted.
so,
so.
the,
It's from right here forward.
yeah.
All right, so I'm gonna ask Dusty to step back with me because I'm looking at her hair and I'm kind of trying to decide where I want to paint. So anytime that happens with a client, I do take a step back and just kind of look at it because I feel like when we're on top of it like this, we have a tendency to look right here, and what we really need to be looking at is right here. Because if I section her off of here, she has more strength here, so it'll support more highlights. But if you look right here, she really doesn't, so I need to create strength in the end. So if I step back and look at it, then I can see that. So I need to create strength here. And so I definitely don't want to split that up. So this all needs to be light through this ends right here to be able to create a strength. And then I need to set a dark behind it so that that will pop and look stronger than it is. So I need to kind of create like a visual angle of strength right there. And you can only see that if you take a step back from your client. So I'm going to go ahead and pop a shadow right here. So I'm just kind of dusting that in. All right, and now I'm going to start to build that angle. So to build that angle, I don't want to paint too much on the top side. I want to paint on the front side right here so that it's creating that. So instead of painting here, I'm going to pop it up and paint it here. So right now I am on the front side of this ridge, not the top side.
Terry, the shadow color is equal parts of Wella Color Touch 871 and 771.
Trionics no lift developer.
Correct, yeah, with Trionics No Lift Developer and 1/32 of Olaplex. Alright, so I'm just going to flat load and skim through her ends. And I'm going to go over it a couple times just to create a little bit of friction to get lift with a very low level saturation. It's going to be healthier for her hair to do it that way than if I don't do the friction but I saturate more.
Terry's asking, will you be toning?
So, you know, Abby Werther had a great way of explaining this earlier. She said, let me see if I can remember exactly what she said. She said, tone to finish, not to fix. So, you know, I say that I glaze all of my clients. I rarely ever tone, because to me, in my world, toning means that you're fixing something. Glazing means that you're enhancing something. But I think Abby said it in a better way, which is that she tones to finish, not to fix. So, I mean, I rarely ever let somebody walk out just completely raw because I want to add a signature to it. You know, could I send her out without any kind of glaze or toner? Yeah, I could. But I don't do that because I kind of want to add, you know, a signature to it. Plus, I also want to shut her cuticle down. So I'm going to use something to not only shut her cuticle down, to seal it, add shine, but to also add a signature to it, which is just gonna make it a little bit more than what she could get down the street, right? Do I think I'll have to tone it to fix something? No, but we'll show you guys that. When I rinse her, before we add a glaze to it, we'll either go live or I'll have Dusty post pictures or something.
Lori Bradshaw says, if someone parts on both sides, how do you section and apply the top?
It's a great question. So I asked them where their primary part is. Like if you're going out to dinner, where would you part it? So that's going to be where I'm going to put their main parting off. And then I put a little metal detail clip, which I stuck somewhere in the, oh here, like this, one of these little clips. I'll mark their secondary parting. So that way, I'd like say it was right here on the side of her head. As I'm working up her head, then I'll take that into consideration when I see that clip to, oh yeah, I need to paint some energy into that area as well because she also parts her hair there. But I am going to ask them where their primary part is. Alright, so Misty curls her hair. So if she only wore it straight, it would be my instinct to want to paint it just like this because her hair wants to fall this way. But she does curl it, so she curls it kind of up and back. So because of that, I'm going to paint it on both sides. I'm going to paint it here and here. If she only wore it straight, then I would paint it here because that depth underneath there would give it a little bit more strength. But since she does curl it, I'm going to paint it on both sides.
Hi, Christy. Get a better angle for both of you.
So we're going to go. Do we look younger? Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and tilt my brush, just work off that corner. And this is where I definitely would want to choose a softer bristle brush because her hair is very fine here. She's got all those little baby hairs there.
Donna says you are both beautiful.
Aw, thanks, Donna.
Thank you.
Get it from her mama.
Get it from my mama.
I mean, and her dad. He was pretty good looking too.
Oh, where did I get the hair from? How do you guys get thick, curly hair, and I got thin, fine, gray hair?
Our curl is from the master's side, actually. I found that out.
Oh.
I don't know where you get fine hair, though.
I
Sorry.
mean, I have
Well,
some-
fine is from mom. I don't know where you got the thin. Sorry.
Oh.
Y'all done? Alright, so I want to talk about the, seems to be the tip of the week, which is the vapor gap. So when I go to wrap her, I want you guys to notice that I am not trying to wrap like exactly where that part line is. I'm going to kind of go over it like this, very loosely, and then I'm going to create a bump and a bump. And if Dusty kind of comes this way, she can see that there's a gap right there. And that gap is so that as this lightener processes and hits her body heat, there's going to be gases that are going to be released. And if there isn't a vapor gap like that for it to escape, it's going to hit her body heat and temperature and it's going to expand down, which that's going to create those hot spots that you get. So it's really important that when you're wrapping, particularly on the hairline, because obviously you don't want to see that. Plus, people tend to be a little warmer right along their hairline anyways. Especially, I've noticed this to be exceptionally important with masks because the hot air is coming up this way. And so it hits that. If you don't have that vapor gap, that lightener is going to expand. So make sure you have that little gap like that.
That explains something that happened last week.
There you go.
I got somebody like me that's hot all the time. I am burning up. Jared said he turned it down.
Yeah. All right, so let me show you another little trick for really fine hair. So I want her highlights to sit stronger right here. So if I want them to sit stronger right here, then I'm going to paint some depth right there to set that up. So with her highlights in this section, her highlights are only going to be dropped. I'm not going to paint any highlights right here because I want this to intentionally be dark so that the highlights I put on top of it really pop and stand out. So she's already light enough to my liking through those ends, so I'm just going to go ahead and add my shadow tone.
Hi, Angie.
Same through here. I'm already happy with her light through her ends. So why put lightener on top of already lightened hair? So I'm going to add a shadow. So basically what I'm doing right now is I'm setting the stage for the main attraction that's going to go right on top. The only place that I'm going to put light right on her scalp line is right here.
Which Angie camera? Dodson?
Yeah.
Hi, Angie!
I don't
Did
know.
you guys see her visor method yesterday? That was so cool.
No, not yet.
I like hate to foil, but that made me want to like bust out some foils and
I
try
know
it.
she is the foil queen though.
Yeah,
Like
she
diva,
is.
goddess, Mrs. Miyagi of foils.
All right. So again, if I want to create strength where she has, you know, fine hair, I don't want these baby little brush strokes, right? So I'm going to create a little bit bigger slant because she needs that strength in that brush stroke to be able to make that highlight stand out and make her hair look fuller. If I paint a whisper, it's going to get lost in there, so I want to paint a shout. And then with Misty's hair, just for added insurance, because it's so fine right there, and I don't want any of that lightener sitting on that, I'm just going to create a little pillow just to support that up so that I have an extra little bit of vapor gap right there. Do you guys see it? That just gives me a little bit of extra vapor gap for insurance.
I've seen people use cotton for that. Is the plastic better?
For me, the plastic is better because I can see what's going on underneath there and it's not as heavy. I've tried cotton before, and for me, one, I couldn't see how things were processing as well, and then two, it was just a little heavier, and I did have it one time kind of smoosh the, you know, the dome that we're trying to create. It kind of smooshed it because it was too heavy.
Yeah, that's the problem I see with it.
Yeah. I mean, if it works for you, go for it, but for me, I had some unfortunate circumstances, so I don't use cotton. This is just one more thing to have on my station when the wrap will work.
Right.
So you guys, this is getting a little shiny. So what I'm going to do, anytime your lightener starts to get a little shiny, that means it's starting to lose its strength. So I'm not going to start over remixing. That's not really necessary. I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit more powder because your power is in your powder. So if I want to add some power or strength back to it, I'm just going to give it a little added muscle there and mix that in, and that'll bring it right back up to where it was. It's just because the lightener's been sitting for a while. So we want it to look more matte again. So if you notice that your lightener is starting to get a little shiny, you want to go ahead and add a little bit more powder to it.
It's helpful to just bring some powder to your station.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, pre-balayage, I used to do all my mixing in the mixing room, but now I always keep everything right here in my room with me so that I'm not having to walk away. So I'm just adding enough so that it looks matte to me.
Donna says smoosh is the word of the day.
Yep, smoosh is the word of the day. There we go. That's right back to where I wanted it. You guys see how that's nice and thick again?
Hi Trish, this is Sunlight's Balayage. Lightning, clay lightener.
So it's nice and thick. That's where I want it. So I I know that sometimes people will go ahead and think, you know, oh, I'm going to add a little bit more developer to make it stronger, but that's actually going to dilute the strength back down. Your developer is for your speed, not for your strength. Your lightener is your strength, your developer is your speed. So if you add more developer, you're actually just going to dilute your strength. You'll just get to orange really fast.
We don't want orange.
Yeah, we don't want orange. All right, so again, we want her to look melty. So I want to set her highlight like that. And again, I'm looking at her ends so I can see. I want it to be like here. So I want to place shadow here to cover some of those sparkles. And then I'm going to place the highlight right here. So that way the highlight is going to accent from, you know, what she sees. So she's going to see blonde. But if I put a shadow here, it's going to give that nice dimension and that nice melt from the top. And those two tonalities together is what's going to make her hair look more three-dimensional and make it look thicker. So I need to go ahead and warm up my lightener again since it's freshly mixed. If I try to just go ahead and directly paint it without warming it up first, it's gonna be kind of stiff and hard to smooth out on our hair. So we're gonna warm it up on our paddle first so that we're not trying to fuss with it on the hair. Do you want to come like right here probably?
I'll also say that if you're not already using a metal bowl, get a metal bowl.
Yeah. Well,
It makes a huge difference with the Sunlight keeps its consistency better.
Okay, so you guys can see I'm painting three-dimensionally here. I'm painting on the front side of her ridge with my lightener, and on the top side of her ridge with her shadow tone, and that's going to make her hair look so much thicker. We're creating basically like an optical illusion right now.
Hi, Sophia. Hi, Sonia.
And then I'm going to wrap that lightener down around to the ends.
Sophia says, thank you for an incredible week that you've shared. You are wonderful.
Thank you so much for joining us this week. I've been very blessed to have some amazing education. All right, so again, you should be able to hear my bristles. And that's because I'm just going for a shift in tonality because she's already blonde. I'm not going for damage, just a shift.
Hi. That's not Mario. Mr. Lopez. Don't want to murder your name. No, this is only with a clay base lightener. We are using Sunlight's lightener. Jared's still out there.
All right, so if I want this to pop and I want this to pop, I want to place a little bit of light here, but I want depth here to make those stand out. So I'm going to create a shadow so that it makes those stand out. This shadow will lift those highlights up. And then I'm just going to saturate it about a 20 through those ends because they're already light. So you should really hear my bristle. So you should be able to tell the difference between this saturation and this saturation behind it.
This is going to give you about a 10 volume lift.
Yeah, that's probably 10, yeah.
This is what, 20?
Yeah,
30?
20 to 30. All right, so let's start to build some strength then here in the front.
Jennifer Annis asked, do you ever use foil?
I honestly hardly ever use foil personally. The particular technique I'm doing, it would be nearly impossible to create with foil. Do you guys see how I'm picking up three-dimensional sections like this? So with me picking up three-dimensional sections, and I'm going to paint three-dimensional sections, you really couldn't put that in a foil. In a foil, you'd have to be on a flat plane. So I can't create the same kind of visual effect with the three-dimensional look with a foil, because it would have to be on a flatter plane. I have one client that I still foil, that's it. I mean, obviously there's always going to be a time and a place for foil, but it's not a technique I use very often personally.
Sophia says she wished we could have sunlight balayage here in Greece.
I'm not sure if sunlight's balayage is in Greece or not. But in the meantime, you can definitely watch a ton of online Sunlight's Balayage education, and through sunlightsbalayage.com you can actually sign up for Zoom lessons, which is pretty amazing. Alright, so I'm on the front side of her ridge right now, not on the top side. So let's see if you wrap around just real quick so they can see that I'm not on that other side of the ridge. So I'm only on one side right now. So I'm only painting what's towards her face, not what's on top. And again, that's to make it look more three-dimensional, to give her more volume. And I'm not going to go ahead and paint through her ends, because her ends in this little section are pretty fragile. And they're already pretty light, so I'm not going to paint that. I'm just going to drop it. And I want you guys to notice that I'm not wrapping this tight. There's plenty of gap there. Right, now this section I'm going to paint on both sides. I'm going to hold the hair up so that I can see both sides.
Jay Ella says, are you holding the brush horizontal to the section?
So I'm holding the brush so that if, let's say this was the hair, the brush is always going to be like this. So if I turn the hair, then I'm going to turn the brush. What I'm not doing is ever like this. So as the hair shifts, my brush is going to shift like this. I'm keeping the bristles parallel to the hair, never like this. And that's because I'm working off of the length of the brush, not, this is what we call the heel of the brush, this is the toe of the brush. I'm not using the toe of the brush, I'm using the heel of the brush.
I'm learning such great terminology.
Good.
I don't ever remember terminology. This is why I can't teach.
Alright, I want Dusty to walk around real quick because I want her to see on the other side. I want her to see that there's no lightener on the back side. So that's the depth that's going to make that front pop. And because I'm being very gentle and careful with my brush stroke, I'm not pushing lightener through to that back side.
Now, if she was really gray, would you put color there now, or would you just be a double process and color her beforehand?
You could do either. You could either do a double process, you could do a root tap afterwards, or I don't have color on here, but or I could just put a little bit of, you know, gray blending color right there, depending on how much gray she had. Then you could. And I do that sometimes. Sometimes if I have somebody that has not quite enough gray that they need a full double process, but they have enough that I don't want to leave that, then I'll just dust a little bit of a gray blending tonality there.
Hi, Lisa Reinierson.
Hey, Lisa.
Hey.
Alright, so now that I've got all this wrapped, I'm going to show you that vapor gap again. So Dusty comes down here. So before I come over here to work, see how I've got this all real loose? Now I'm just going to fold it up enough that there's a gap. So that way as it processes, those vapors can release and not create hot spots. I'm sorry. Alright, so this really fine hair on this short side of her part, I don't usually use these clips because it's too much weight on that lightener. So I really like these Color Track grippies to keep the hair out of the way, because they won't deflate my domes.
I could turn that into a wrap
Oh my gosh. So I'm just gonna set a shadow right there. And then Misty is an asymmetrical bob. So I want this to stand out more. So I want this to appear lighter right here to stand out. So taking that into consideration, I'm going to paint this side differently. So I actually want to have dark right here and her light right here so that it's sitting on top so that the light goes that way. So I want this darker and the light to go that way.
Jayla wants to know where and how much you get these thingies.
So these you can get from just Color Track's website. I think they're like, I want to say they're like less than $15. I don't remember exactly how much they are, to be perfectly honest, but they're not expensive.
They work wonderful with short or men's haircuts also.
Oh yeah, they do. They're great with that. Okay, so I'm going to put a little shadow right here. And this is, again, like what we talked about at the very beginning. I'm painting her haircut. So taking into consideration the haircut she has. So painting my strength on top. And our ends are already light, so I don't need to work all the way through to her ends. So I think this is an important thing to talk about, that as we're painting, a lot of times people will ask me, you know, do you paint both sides exactly the same? And my answer to that is almost never. I want to make sure that they're kind of like in the same family. Obviously, we always say sisters, not twins. But there are also exceptions to that. So Misty has an asymmetrical haircut, so she's shorter here and longer there. So visually to me, it's going to accent that haircut better if this side isn't quite as light. I want her oomph to be right there. So I'm going to pull out this little triangle right there. And I want all this to be dark, which you can see I did previously. And I only want light right there on the edge.
Teresa asks, if it's already darker hair at root, why do you add shade color there?
Because she has gray. I know it's pretty hard to see on the camera, but it's because she has gray. If she didn't have gray that we were trying to cover, then I probably wouldn't. Unless I was just trying to shift tonality and maybe add some, you know, tonal shift.
I like how the tone changes because my natural color is mousy.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I mean, some of it is just for tonality shift so that it's not quite such a like a mousy kind of dishwater color.
You can kind of
It
see
really
a
makes it
sparkle in
pop.
there.
Yeah.
Eee. Just trust us. They're there. Don't point them out.
That's funny. So I do want it light right here, but I don't want it quite as light right here as it would be over there. Because I want this to kind of be like my bridesmaid. I want that to be like my maid of honor right here, and then this be the bride.
Wedding party in my head. That's a great analogy though.
Thanks. Thought of it one day. I don't know why. Who knows? Alright, so here's another reason why I like to use wrap as opposed to foil, because you know I can see what I'm creating there, so I know what I want to do on top because I know what I did down here. Because it's clear. Alright, so I'm not gonna try to match this up to that. One, because I just don't think it looks as natural that way, but also because I want this side to be a little different. So I do want to see where that's painted so that they look like they're in the same haircut, right? But I don't want them to be exactly matched up. I'm more looking at her ends and where I want to create strength, which I want to create visually this. So I'm going to paint my melt and then my highlight here. Alright, so just dust in my melt, not going for full saturation. Just want to kind of dust it in there. And then I'll go ahead and paint on the interior with my highlight. And again, I'm not trying to go for full strength there because I don't want to distract from here and there. If I paint this one too strong, it's actually going to steal the stage from those.
If someone has never painted highlights before, would you suggest virgin hair?
I just want to make sure I understand your question.
For them to first practice on it the first time that they ever do
Oh,
it.
I gotcha. Okay, sorry, I didn't understand what you meant. Okay,
Who has virgin hair?
So, actually, if you've never painted, I would just suggest getting out mannequins. I mean, honestly, that's the best way to go. Practice on mannequins because, you know, for one thing, your client's not going to be nervous. And for the second thing, you're not going to be nervous. I mean, nobody does their best work when they're freaking out, right?
That mannequin's not top mannequin.
Yeah. So, you can totally,
No
you can
Google bad review.
Right, you can totally concentrate when you're working on a mannequin. I mean, I still work on mannequins. I want Dusty to come with me real quick. Just want to show you guys something. Obviously, this is what I was working on not that long ago. So, I mean, and if you open the other door, you'll see the same thing. I've got mannequins on the backs of most of my doors.
It's not creepy at all.
Not at all. I mean, when I'm working on perfecting a technique or a placement, or if I'm having a struggle with the client, you know, I don't try to work that out on my client. I work that out on a mannequin. So if you haven't painted yet, start on a mannequin. Definitely. And then as far as once you jump to a client, you know, I have kind of mixed feelings about that, because in some ways, maybe it would be easier for you to jump to a virgin haired client. But honestly, in a lot of ways, that to me is harder because you have no like color mapping yet. So to me, you can get a little confused with what do I paint where? And honestly, that probably just depends on how your brain works. I mean, for me in the beginning, those were actually harder. It's not now. Now I get super excited to paint somebody with virgin hair because I can paint whatever I want. But in the beginning, that was kind of hard because I didn't really know what to paint where. So for me, it was actually easier to work off of somebody that had previous highlights because I could kind of color map based upon what they had. But that, you know, that probably depends on how your personal brain works. I don't know. How do you feel about that, Dusty? Was it easier for you in the beginning on?
In my entire career, I think I've only had like maybe 4 virgin colored hair clients.
Yeah, I've been coloring my hair since 1900.
Yeah, even my teenagers have had previously colored hair. So like my kids.
But maybe on somebody who does an all over color and wants just subtle highlights, that might be a great start. I know Michelle in our salon did that on Julie last week.
That's a great suggestion.
Hi, Mama.
Aww,
Hi,
Grandma. We miss you, Mama.
Very much.
So pay attention to that vapor gap again. See that I'm just kind of dropping it. I'm not really trying to make sure that it's sitting right on top of it. And then just like I did this one here, I'm going to create a little pillow so this sits up and on top of it, just to give me a little bit of extra security to make sure I don't get any kind of bruising.
I'll get close. It's really hard to see since it's clear, but.
So I'm just going to give this a little cushion for this to sit on top of so that I have plenty of room for that to oxidize.
Breathe?
Breathe. Oxidize. All right, this is our last piece. Do you guys have any questions that we didn't answer? And if there's anything that we didn't catch, you can always feel free to drop them in the comments. We'll get to them later. We thank you so much for joining us this week with Sunlight's Balayage Takeover Week. I think it's been pretty amazing, pretty epic. The next takeover week that we're working on is a cut week, which I think is pretty exciting. I don't have all the dates for that yet, but we will be posting it in the forum. But it will be all things cutting, because that's been highly requested. I know, right? Be awesome. So you guys definitely won't want to miss that. If you guys have missed any of the lives over the last week, you can always search within the forum #LacyTutorial or #LiveTutorial, and those will all pop up for you. All of the live sessions from this week will be pinned to the top of the page for another couple weeks. Probably leave them there for about 2 weeks. But like I said, after that, you can always find them by searching #LacyTutorial or #LiveTutorial. So these little tiny baby hairs here, I'm just kind of skimming at like a 10 volume type of a lift. Just kind of dusting. Again, I'm not trying to take the stage away from that over there.
Bernadette, we will post pictures after everything is done.
All right. So again, vapor gap. Plenty of gap there. Use this to secure all of that. Again, there's still plenty of a gap there.
Well, I've never done this step right here before.
So
that's fancy.
So the point in the wrap that I had laid and draped here and then now just wrapped up is so that, you know, most of our clients, when, you know, they're processing, we leave the room, whatever, they're immediately going to pull out their phone and they're going to tilt their head down. And I just don't want all those pieces of wrap to shift. So those little wings that I just wrapped up there is so that doesn't happen. It's so she can look down and nothing's going to move.
Okay, I'm gonna